On December 21st, 2017, my father passed away. He was 81 years old and he was in the final stages of dementia. Now, looking back at my father's life, I would thank God that he was a part of my life, and I thank God that I was able to have a relationship with my father because many men out here, they don't get that opportunity to have a relationship with their father, and they don't appreciate the things that fathers do for them, especially in the black community. Because in the black community, oftentimes we get told stories by our mothers about our fathers, and those stories oftentimes are skewed and distorted from their emotional pain, and we don't get a really objective picture of who this man is and how much of an impact this man can have on your life. Now, when I look at my father, I can really see the impact this man had in my life. And I started to see that when I was about 34 years old. Now, back when I was 34 years old, in 2008, I had finally gotten this civil service job at City College of New York working in their library. And over that course of time, I had a chance to talk to my father about this job and my experience, and I decided to have a Father's Day with my father. Me and my sister, we went all the way down to where he lived, and we went to go visit my father. And then after we went to go visit him, we went to a McDonald's where we had breakfast with my father, and he didn't really want anything. All he wanted was the breakfast and the ability to spend time with us. And I didn't appreciate what he was doing with that. What he was doing with that was he was showing that, he loved us and he wanted to spend time with us. And that's something that people, they don't really think about it too much or appreciate it. So that was one of those moments that was very special to me. Now, I think about my father and our relationship, and it was one of those things, again, that shaped and molded who the man that I became because a lot of times, again, we get the picture of who our father is from our mother, and our mother will tell us again, she's coming from her experience, she's not coming from your experience, and I'm coming from my experience with my father most times, and I see a completely different man. Again, I saw a completely different man when I was 34 years old. That's when I started to see the man who he truly was. I started to see, all the things that he did for me that shaped the man that I became. And I remember one of the things that he did to shape the man that I became back when I was about 6 years old. Now, when I was 6 years old, that's when he started giving me an allowance. And this allowance that he gave me, it was $5. And he took me to the barber shop and I got a haircut, and then I had to pay the barber for my haircut. And I remember getting upset over that. But what I didn't understand was my father was trying to teach me a lesson about fiscal responsibility. And the lesson was that anything you get in this world, you have to pay for. Now, he didn't express that directly to me. He showed it through action. And the action really, that's what really stayed with me because I had to understand that whenever somebody gives you money, that you have to take, and you get something for it, you have to pay for it. And I had to pay for that haircut. And again, that was about teaching me responsibility at an early age. Now, I was upset about that because I wanted to use the $5 to buy, pizza or something like that. But that was a lesson he was trying to teach me. And it was a lesson that has stayed with me all throughout my entire life. Now, my father was a guy, he worked two jobs in order to take care of us. One job he worked was a security guard at Rockefeller University. The second one was a job at St. Luke's Hospital as a parking attendant. And he worked those two jobs in order to do things like be able to give us an allowance and be able to buy us things like school clothes, Christmas gifts, and have suits for Easter. Because back in the 80s, you would buy yourself a nice suit for Easter, and you'd also wear that suit for picture day when you were in elementary school. And my father bought all those things for me. I remember also, I was a really husky kid, and he would take me to Barney's to buy suits, and he bought me like two or three suits from Barney's, and we did those type of things together. All those things we did together when we would go out sometimes, because again, he would have these Thursdays and Fridays off from those two jobs, and then he would have that time to spend with me. And I remember one of the things we used to do on those Thursdays and Fridays was we would go to the barbershop, especially on the Fridays. Usually on the Fridays, he would, he would bring his car down and he would take me to go on a drive all the way to the barbershop. Now, I lived on Park Avenue and 167th Street in the Bronx, and he would drive me all the way to Harlem and Frederick Douglass Boulevard to this black barbershop. And again, that was all part of my growing up. I would go to this barbershop with him. Then after I get my haircut and he'd get his haircut, what we would do is we would go to McDonald's sometimes. And that was also, part of our, you know, going out together. That was things that we did together. Now, as I got older, I didn't really see what my father was about. I used to believe what my mother would tell me about my father, but in my teens, in my early 20s, that's what I used to believe. But in my later 20s, as I was struggling to find work for myself, I started to see more of a value to the relationship between myself and my father. And I started seeing a different picture of my father than that of what my mother told me. Now, this picture again started to become a lot clearer to me back in 2008 when I was working at City College of New York in their science library. Now, during that time, I had finally gotten what I thought was going to be the job I was going to have for life, and I was able to do something I was only able to do once in my life back in 2000 when I was working at AmeriCorps Vista, and that was be able to spend Father's Day with my father. Now, I remember back in 2000 when I had that job, he was very happy for me working at AmeriCorps, and I was able to give him a Father's Day outing at 125th Street in Harlem. And I bought some he saw some sneakers I had, and then he went out and bought the exact same sneakers because he liked the way they looked, and he was able to pick up that pair of sneakers. And that was what we did after we came out of McDonald's. Now, the second time I was able to do that again in 2008, I had my sister with me, and we went to McDonald's again because he didn't really want much. All he wanted to do was spend time with us. So we went to the McDonald's, and then he showed us, different parts of his neighborhood. He showed us the university he used to work at, and he showed us different things. Now, my sister didn't appreciate what he was doing at the time, but I did. And I saw what he was trying to do and how he was trying to help us over the years. And that's when I started to really appreciate everything that my father did for me. Or to show them how much you appreciate them. And I got that chance to do that. And I thank God that I was able to do that. Now, I really appreciate one thing that my father did for me back when I was 18 years old. Because back when I was 18 years old, he took me down to the Wiz and told me I could buy whatever I wanted. I had my choice between a camcorder or a word processor. Now, I really wanted to do video back when I was in high school, and I wanted my own camcorder. But after I changed schools from Park West to Taft, I decided to go back to writing. And when I was able to go to the Wiz, I decided to buy the word processor instead because I said I would be able to write stories. Now, that word processor that my father bought me back when I was 18 years old, that was something that defined my life. I mean, that purchase that he got for me, that word processor, was how I started my writing career. That was the word processor I used to write all my term papers in college. That was the word processor that I used to write my first book, which was The Changing Soul. That was the first word processor I used to write all my query letters. That's how I learned a bit about the publishing industry. And that word processor was the word processor I used, to write the first ISIS. So my father had a major impact on my writing and the start of my writing career. If it wasn't for him buying me that word processor, I would have never been able to go out here and write all of these 50 books I have written and published because that word processor, again, was the one that I used to go out here and write my, again, my term papers in college my resumes, my cover letters, my query letters, and it was the one that I wrote my first novel, The Changing Soul, and my second novel, Isis, which was published in 2002. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without the help of my father. Now, I pay tribute to my father in many of my books, like the Cassandra Cookbook. The Simon James character is named partially after my father. That's my father's first name in that character's name. Now, in The Temptation of John Haynes' name is John Simon Haynes, which is a play on my own name, Sean Simon James, which is the same thing. And again, that's a tribute to my father. Now, the third book that I paid tribute to my father in was The Legendary Mad Matilda. Now, The Legendary Mad Matilda was, excuse me, the book I was working on before I found out about my father's condition. That was the book that I was working on at the time. And when I found out that my father was ill, I was decided to dedicate that book to my father's memory because I wanted to honor him. So that book has a real meaning to me, and excuse me, because that was the book that I was working on when I found out about my father's dementia earlier this year, and again, it's a miracle from God that I was able to get that book published and get a cover on it because again, this book was one that I decided to finish because I wanted to honor my father. I wanted to dedicate the book to my father. And I look at the way God worked it out for me to get this book out before he had passed. And that was a blessing. Because I had a way to honor my father through my own work and be able to show a tribute to my father with this book. Now, whenever people sit there and will badmouth fathers, I have this to say to them. You need to go out here and get to know your father for yourself. Don't believe what your mother tells you because, again, your mother is oftentimes coming from an emotional perspective and she's coming from her own personal issues with that man. You need to get to know that man for yourself and find out about that man for yourself and find out his side of the story. This was one of the things I tried to do with the first ISIS back in 2002 was give people that perspective from that father's perspective because as I was again even in my mid 20s I was starting to understand things about getting your father's perspective of the story because I used to again when I was out of work I used to go visit my father and still spend time with him and again as I got to know him I started to see a different picture of this man and again that picture came clear to me in 2008 and that's when I saw who he really was. And this is something you need to do for yourself out here because I see so many black men, they grow up learning about their father from their mother, but they never make an effort to get to know him for themselves. And again, I thank God I had a chance to get to know my father, and I always had him in my life because without that man, I wouldn't be the man I am today, and I would not be where I am today. Now, I have some regrets about my relationship with my father. And the one thing that I do regret is not having that job, you know, when he was alive. I wanted to be able to show him that I was working and able to take care of myself before he passed away. I wanted him to see that because he was so concerned about me being out of work these last 9 years. And it was one of the things that even worried him, even as his condition was deteriorating. And I wanted him to see that because I wanted him to see that I was capable of being able to get a job out here, being able to keep a job out here, and be a man just like he was a man out here. That was something I wanted him to see before he passed away. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that before he passed away. He didn't get to see that. And that really is one of those things that stays with me, is that he didn't get to see me go back to work after losing that job back in 2008, because he was very proud of me when he saw me out here working. Now, he knew about my writing, but I didn't think he valued it that much, because in my family they really don't value the books that I put out here. They think that it's not anything important. But I really wanted him to see me with a full-time job. I really wanted him to see me working, and I really wanted him to see that, because it's something that would show him that I was just as capable a man as he was, and that I could do things on the same level that he did, and was being able to capable of taking care of myself. That's something I wanted him to see. Sadly, I wasn't able to do that, and that's one of those regrets that I have about our relationship. The other one was that I was never able to get as close to him as I did, because of the walls I put up emotionally due to all the bullying and harassment I would get, and then him talking about my weight issues. And I wish that I hadn't put that wall up, but I did take it down some so that I could connect with him, and then I could finally thank him for everything he did after that fight I had with my mother. And after that fight, I think, again, that was God's way of giving me closure to our relationship, because I had no idea that his condition was going to deteriorate that way. I thought he would be all right, but it didn't work out that way. But I thank God I had the chance to thank him for everything that he did, because, again, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the man I am today, and I wouldn't be here to be able to help other men become better men in their lives, and do things to improve the quality of their lives through things like my books and my men's issues videos and my MGTOW videos. All of that foundation was established by my father and the things that he taught me, and I finally appreciate all the things that he taught me and how they shaped the man that I became today.